Hello everybody, my name is Gary Yao, and today I would like to share with you a idea that is going against the traditional philosophy of the great American dream. Grant Cardone, in his book The 10X Rule, says, buy where others want to rent and rent where you want to live. And that is what we're going to talk about today. Own where you can rent and rent where you want to live. This idea is actually not far-fetched as people might think. In fact, it is becoming the ideology of some millennials. When I first heard of this statement, I understood the ideology and it makes perfect sense for those who are willing to think outside the box. People are starting to catch up with this idea since millennials are dealing with the highest level of student debt this country has ever seen. They are getting smarter about how to handle the biggest purchase of their lives. In simple terms, buy investment properties. Consider this. If you buy a house, use that money to buy income-generating real estate that will bring you money instead. It is a common misconception that home is an asset. Even if you're paying the mortgage, it is still making it a liability. For example, let me explain to you what's the difference between asset and a liability. That is explained in a classic book by Ro Kiyosaki, in which an asset, it is a vehicle. Anything that you buy that can increase in value with time and also will give you, well, money, in this sense, cash flow. A liability, on the other hand, is something that depreciates in value, and in the worst case of scenarios, it would eat away your money like an alligator in a pit. For example, a car. A car is a depreciating asset. Well, actually, it's a depreciating object or vehicle that as soon as you buy a brand new car, when you drive outside of the lot, it depreciates, I think, like 10 or 15% of the value of the car already. Not to mention that you have to maintain it by, well, obviously, oil change, wear and tear every single year. So cars, clothes, things like that lower and goes down in value every year. Where in the same scenario, a house will go up in value based on its equity. Now, I'm digressing. When you buy a house, it's different though. Since people would think like, for example, you buy a house is technically buying part of the equity. But let me ask you, we all know the consequences if you decide not to pay the mortgage every month. Your banker will call you and tell you either you pay or we'll keep your house. So where's owning your home an asset? To put things in perspective, let me tell you, there are 168 hours a week. 106 hours a week, right? And out of those weeks, you spend 40 hours at work, yes? And out of those 40 hours, you sleep roughly 7 hours a day, which makes 49 hours a week, right? Sleep. And out of that, you spend 30 hours a week away from home, commuting to work, doing recreational activities, family outings, pick up the kids, drop them off at the practice or daycare, etc. That's another 30 hours, right? So you add all this together, that leaves you at roughly 119 hours a week that you spend outside the home. That is the equivalent of 70% of your week that you're outside. Now, does it make sense for you to spend money on something that you get to enjoy 30% of the time? Makes no sense, right? And yet you're paying full price on it. Well, dare I say full-time money on it? So, the main reason people choose to buy a home are: one is the desire to buy a house. Second, the desire to own an asset, which we're established that really is not much of an asset. Third, stop wasting money on rent. Or four, move to a better school district or downsize from your home where your kids are now in college. Have you noticed that all these reasons are emotional? Now, I'm not saying that it is bad. I just want to share with you this idea from an investor point of view. Now, other reasons that people mention to buy is stop wasting time or money on rent. I get that. There's no point in spending money on something that does not belong to you. Another reason, to move to a better school district. Your children deserve the best, and best education and best safety, no doubt. All these points are extremely valid, and it should not be taken otherwise. This is the only problem with these reasons though. They all cost money and time. Now, let's talk about buy versus rent. Buy versus rent. For example, imagine that you're looking to buy a $500,000 house, right? And it's going to be a conventional purchase price, right? And it's going to be a conventional 30-year loan. And you're going to put 5% down payment, which is equivalent to $25,000 in down payment. Your roughly payment on all this is going to be $2,500 or $2,500, right? Every month. Now, what if you spend that money of an income producing fourplex, right? And you get a cash flow of $800 every month, right? After expenses. That's equivalent of $9,600 a year. So instead of spending $2,500 a month on housing, which could barely pay off your home loan in the first few years, now you get to earn $9,600 of additional income per year. Now, buyers will ask me, does that mean that I should never buy a house for myself and my family? Not necessarily. I just want you to take another look at the current financial situation, or your current financial situation. If you're struggling to buy a home today, consider other alternative to having real estate assets. Let me give you another example. Imagine that companies like Apple, Microsoft, or Tesla offer you to sell you their companies, which are assets that generate income, for only 5% down payment, and the bank will finance the 95%. Wouldn't you buy them? So, if you would say yes to buying these companies for 5% down payment, why can't we treat the real estate assets like a business, which is actually the pretty same perspective, a business perspective? The way I see it is this: the human population is not going to drop anytime soon. And as long as humans continue to procreate, plan or not, the demand for housing will continue to increase. As a result, the demand for rental units will increase. In summary, own where you can rent and rent where you can live. This is Gary Yao, and I will talk to you soon.